of the thoughts in my head that I titled Don't Ignore Your Genius. There's something special I want to share with you. Now listen to this. Listen to this. There are different strata in life. There are different strata in life. And very interestingly, you are the one who determines what stratum you fall into. I'll say that again so you could catch it. There are different strata in life, and you are the one who determines what stratum you fall into. Now, here's the thing. Let's look into the world of politics. So there is the politician. Then there is the executives of that politician. That's a different strata. It's a lower strata. Then there are the thugs, the foot soldiers of that politician. That's also a different stratum. And it's a lower stratum compared to the stratum of the executives of the politician. So these are three different strata. I explain them again, or I iterate them so you don't forget. The class where the politician is one stratum. The class where his executives are is another stratum. The class where the thugs are is another stratum. Now, what are the factors that determines who falls into which class? You need to understand something. This world is governed by innovators, by business leaders, and by thinkers, or political thinkers, or we say politicians in the sense. So politicians, innovators, and businessmen. They are the leaders of this world. Do you know that? They are in a particular stratum in this life. So just today in the news, Elon Musk was threatening the seventh biggest economy of the world, California, that if they don't make certain changes about their head policy, he's going to move his manufacturing headquarters from California elsewhere. This is one individual, but he's in the ruling class of the world. Who is he? He's an innovator. That's one man from South Africa. He's not even originally from America. Are you listening to what I'm saying? So, three strata here. One, the class where the politicians, the innovators, the business leaders, where they fall into. Second strata, it's a class where the executive, the people who follow them, fall into. The last strata is a class where the foot soldiers fall into. So I was asking you, what determines what class these people are? What determines? Some people think it is the cards that life deck them. Some people think it's just the way their life is. There's nothing they can do about it. I was born poor. Do you know where I grew up? No. Nobody in this world and no circumstance in this world actually determine what class of life you fall into. What determines what class of life you fall into is you. And you show your class. Directly or indirectly, you do show your class. I'll tell you, for example, the man who is speaking like this, you hear somebody say that my uncle, you know what help me now? You know what help me now? That person already showed you his class in life. The class of people that should be helped. The class of people, are you seeing what I'm saying? So you don't know, but most times, when a wise man listens to you talk, the wise man hears you. He hears your class. He knows what class you are in. When you need something, what do you think? Or how do you think when you need something? Do you think I should get up and get it? Or you think, who should give me? Do you think, what do I do to get it? these are three different classes. The first class think I get up, I get it. I take what I want. The second class is thinking, what do I do? I have to earn it. The third class is thinking, someone has to give it to me. And interestingly also, I want to show you something. To act above or to act beneath your stratum always causes crisis. To act above or to act beneath the stratum of life you are in will always lead to crisis. Very important that you know this. A man who's number two, but wants to act number one, he will cause crisis and he will not be able to make sizable advancement in his own life. A man who in his natural position is supposed to be the manager of somebody's conglomerate, but he sees people like Richard Branson on the news. He sees Aliko Dangote on the news. He sees Femi Otedola on the news. And then he thinks he's supposed to talk like them, behave like them. The man has put himself in a crisis position because he's acting above his stratum. But if he also begins to act below his stratum, he will not be effective, productive, otherwise fruitful in the particular class he's in. The last thing I want to show to you about these classes of life is this. There is only one way. There is only one way to step up in the strata of life. There is only one way to step up in the strata of life, and it is through mental growth. There is only one way to step up in the strata of life. It is called mental growth. Mental growth. That is, if the man who is a political thug wants to leave that place to become the political executive, the political appointee, he will begin to start to think differently. He'll begin to start to think, the thug thinks, who should I move? Who should I shake? Who should I kill? Who should I fight? Where should I burn? The executive think, who should I use? Who should I send? Who does it affect? The only way to step up in the strata of life is through mental growth. Never forget that. So I said today I'll primarily be speaking to you about not ignoring your genius. Not ignoring your genius. Now, you are supposed to be growing and advancing in what you do. You are supposed to be growing and advancing in your class of life. You are supposed to be growing and advancing in the work of your hand. You are supposed to be growing and advancing in your career. You see one thing, I've often explained this to a few people and in some of my teachings. In Genesis 1:26, when God gave us the mandate, why He created us, when God gave us the purpose, why He wanted us to be here on the earth. A lot of times, a lot of people are still asking what their purpose is. And my best response nowadays to the question of what is my purpose, I look for my purpose, I'm looking for my purpose and all of that. My best response is this. That means you think very little of God. A man who is still looking for his purpose here on the earth thinks too little of God. The truth about it is this. Before a product is made, then the manufacturer, in fact, it was the purpose of the product that led the manufacturer to make the product. The manufacturer, that is the producer, does not produce a product and leave the product to go wonder and figure out what his purpose is. You see that? So if God made you and left you to wander on the earth on what your purpose is, then he's either a stupid God, a bad person, but he's none of those things. He said to Jeremiah, before I formed thee in thy mother's womb, I knew thee. There was a purpose for you. And scripture all along made us understand that there's a purpose for us. But what is his purpose? He said, be fruitful, multiply, have dominion, and subdue the earth. 4 things, and I've often broken this down. What does these four things imply? Number one, it means lead yourself. The first one, being fruitful, means lead yourself. Number two, it means lead others. Number three is lead the leaders that lead others. Number four is lead systems. I'll take it again. Number one, being fruitful means you lead yourself. Multiplying means you lead others. Having dominion means you lead leaders. Subduing the earth means you lead systems. Now here's the irony of life. Men who have not led themselves are seeking to lead leaders. Men who have not led themselves are seeking to lead systems. It doesn't work. With life, you must grow from class A to class B. God and life is not a private school. You cannot skip classes. There are no double promotions in life. You must grow from leading yourself to leading others, from leading others to leading leaders, from leading leaders then to leading systems. This is very crucial because we have a lot of Martin Luther King across the world. People who have dreams, people who want to rule the world, people who want to do big things, people, particularly I can see some people put pictures of certain people they admire, and they just put these pictures up on their DP, their stories, their Instagram, their Facebook, and all of that. They see a person put a picture of, let me go far from the church or from the local church. You see a person put a picture of someone like Kanye West on his DP, and this is your ID guy. This is your guy. You just like this guy. No, you don't know the guy. You don't understand how much discipline and how much work and self-leadership that man have put on himself to be able to be this person you admire. So you must understand God's first thing for you is that you lead yourself. When you lead yourself, only then would you be at the stage of being fruitful. So what is the underneath thing of being fruitful? So in fact, if you're taking note, I'd like you to write it this way. Fruitful on top. Put a denominator to it. Lead yourself. Multiply on top. Put a denominator to it. Lead others. Are you seeing that? Dominion. Put a denominator to it. Lead leaders. Subduing the earth. Put a denominator to it. Leading systems. Are you seeing it? So let's start from the top. So God wants you to be fruitful. And I said today, I'll primarily just give one key thought. I've said a couple of things that I know will enrich your life in the School of Wisdom already, but I'll put this one thought, is do not ignore your genius. So this is how you would not ignore your genius. I ask you a question and I want you to write it down on your notes. What have you been learning recently? What have you been learning recently? Too many people ignore their learnings. Too many people, out of admiration of great people, there's an old English quote that the life of great people teaches us one thing, that we can make our life sublime. That is, the life that they live teaches us that we can actually do same. We are not supposed to end our admiration at claps. We are supposed to follow suit. So here's the thing. What have you been learning? For example, we did one whole month, a little over a month of daily broadcasts. Daily broadcasts. What are the things you learned from those broadcasts? I tell you, some of those things are golden. Yesterday, Fareed Zakaria, one of my favorite thinkers in the world, did a show on the world post-COVID-19. And I was just looking to see his thoughts. I realized that almost everything he said, over 95% of the things he was saying for the first time yesterday, I have even shared with our church throughout that season of daily broadcast for a month. So what I'm trying to say to you is you have actually received certain gems, golden gems, nuggets for life. So I ask you, in the last 1 month, please take a piece of paper and write it. What have I learned in the last 1 month? What have I learned in the last 1 month? You see, some people, they'll begin to think. If you have to think too far, you are not learning. If you have to think too far, you have not really been learning. You have not been giving yourself to learning. So what have you really learned in the last 1 month? Please write it down. Now, a student once asked his teacher, how am I supposed to adapt these things I'm learning into my life? And the teacher said to him, that's your job. That's your job. You have to think on what you learned. I've taken it further now. The first thing I said was, write out the things, the lessons you have learned recently. And then I told the story of the student who asked his teacher, how am I supposed to adapt these things into my life? And the teacher said, that's your job. But the answer is, think on the things you have learned. Think on the things you have learned. The bridge between learning and adaptation is thinking. The bridge between learning and adaptation is thinking. And this is where a lot of people fail. They refuse to apply their mind. Now, I said a couple of things during the 1 month of broadcast. I've been saying more and more things in sermons since then. And some of you, if you're asked, what did you learn? You say, I learned this, and you say it, you say it, you say it, you say it. The question is this. Could you just speak one of those thoughts? That's why I told you to write it. What does this thing mean? How does it apply to me? What you are doing here is thinking, applying your mind. You see, this thinking is what I would, for the purpose of this teaching, call translation. The purpose of this teaching, I call it what? Translation. Because translation here is what I just gave you an illustration of. This thing that I learned, I heard it and it made sense. It made sense. For example, you learn that, listen, without a certain sense of centrifugal force, that is the balance coming from your core, that is your center. Without a balance coming from your core and your center, you will not be able to chase anything and produce life out of that thing. Are you seeing that? Now, you learn that thing. What does it now mean? Translation. The moment you begin to think on what does it mean and how does this thing apply to you, you are translating it. You see, this translation is being able to process the thing you are seeing on television to your own language. This translation is you being able to process. When they're interviewing someone, you see, they interview a mogul, a business mogul. Recently, I saw them interview, or I saw a documentary on the designer Ralph Lauren, the brain behind Polo and all of that. So I recorded it, and in the middle of the night, I saw it through over 120 minutes of documentary. Now, I began to see a lot of things about the man's life that I need to adapt. Here's something. A lot of people will watch that same documentary, and all they will say is, the money. Never see a part of it where I'm supposed to adapt this. That bridge between that, watching that documentary about Ralph Lauren on CNN and actually adapting something is thinking, and that thinking is translation. It's the reason some of us have not been able to take a lesson from a simple advertisement. You're watching an advertisement on TV, and somebody says that from that advert that I saw, I learned advert that I saw. I learned this, and this. But you saw the advert. But why were you not able to actually say that thing or learn that thing? Your inability to translate. And what is this, your inability to translate? To think on it. To think on it. So you have to learn that. You have to learn that. So, you know, if somebody tells you, some of us will get to see the same thing, go to the same church. For example, you hear the same teaching, the same message. You actually hear the same message. And all of us were excited. And somebody goes, your friend is telling you in the car, Pastor preached today, and all of that. And you hear all of those teaching. But after all those talk about the sermon, you are still asking, so what do I do now? Here is the problem of me or somebody else telling you what to do now. You must understand, when another person tells you what to do, it does not really bring real advancement to your life. The reason is because it is not coming from your inside. It's not coming from your core. It is what you make of what that person tells you to do that will bring real advancement. So the absence of you applying yourself to lessons, to learning, to the lessons in learning is the reason why some people are not making advancement. So that is your translation. So I'm saying to you, write out the things you've learned in recent time. Translate them. That is where you really are. The challenge is this. You have learned certain things in this season that are very important and instrumental to your work, your career, your life, and your relationships. However, you are abandoning and jettisoning the things you've learned. You are trying to copy what people are doing. You must understand that you and those guys are not on the same lane. They are on a different lane. What is needed now in their life, interestingly, is not what is needed currently in your life. Are you seeing that? So if you begin to do what they are doing, COVID lockdown has now been relaxed in most places, even across this country. Now, some people have begun to forget the things they took notes of. Now they just want to do what their competitor down the street is doing. People have forgotten all the things they wrote. They just want to do what that lady posted on the ground. If you do that, you will not see real results. You must go back and trust your thinking and trust your genius. That's what I mean when I said from the beginning that you should not ignore your genius. Trust your genius. Believe that the thing that you are going to come up with is good. So go back to the things you've learned and ask yourself and translate it. And I've explained what translation is. That's about it. That's about it. So the next thing you want to think on is your work. Think on your work. Think on your work. What do you do? The work of your hand. I've often said over and over that working is an apostolic instruction. Paul speaking said that we should withdraw ourselves from the disorderly brother who is refusing to work. So I hope you are working. So think on your work. And the way to think on your work now is not vague. I will not leave it in the air. Two things you should think about. Your approach, your system. Your approach, your system. Your approach must evolve. Your system must evolve. And it's not because of the relaxed lockdown or coronavirus. Your approach and your system are two things that should continually be evolving. That should continually be evolving. So think on it. I'll continue from here next week, but I'll give a warning. Be careful in this season or beware of mob thinking in this season. Because one thing I've observed wisely since the lockdown was relaxed is that I see people doing what everybody's doing. And that's one culture that has plagued the city of Warri for a long time. One time, filling station was in vogue. Those people who had money had built filling station. Everybody wants to do what everybody else is doing. That mob thinking stifles innovation and real and sustainable advancement. Beware of mob thinking. People are afraid. Everything they change. Let me tell you the truth. One final truth for the evening. Not everything is changing permanently. Some things are on a temporal change. Very few things are changing permanently. So don't, because of people shouting, everything they change, then you change your whole life and you change everything. No. The approach and method may have changed. Your goals did not change. Never forget that. With this, we've come to the end of this week's episode of School of Wisdom, and I hope it enriched you in some way. We'll pick it up next week, Monday, and as you would see, all of the things we are doing in the different schools are different, and they will not be the same, as it were. So please do recommend this to people you love, and it will consistently grow you in the different aspects of your life. God bless you all.
Yeah, the whole world's going crazy. People ride in the streets, killing unborn babies, catching shots from police. Never thought that I would see the day, but now I have to pray for God to hold me down. Cause Lord, I feel like giving up today. I feel like giving up the faith. I swear these people fake. I swear they full of hate. I swear to tell the truth until I'm in the grave. Shots fired, everybody crying, trying to hear the preacher. He ain't preaching to the choir, preaching to the riots. Daddy got fired, he ain't got no Medicare, sipping liquor in his chair. Blank stare, need a blank check. Where your bank at? Babies had a birthday, they gon' need a rain check. Rich man need a vacation, hop a plane. Broke man need a vacation, Mary Jane. Walk outside and everything